Hello, happy Tuesday to you. It is October 6th, 2020. This is Jamie Allen Bishop with Soul Heart Entertainment here, and we are going to do some live toe readings. So we'll just spend the first few minutes getting ready to receive some viewers. I know that there are lots of choices of where you can be and how you can spend your time, so I appreciate very much you spending your time with me today, whenever you join, whether you're live or watching later. Toe reading is this idea that our thoughts, feelings, and emotions show up the way that our toes do. What that means to us, or how that can help, or how it helps me in particular, is when I look down at my toes, I'm kind of checking in with some subconscious thoughts that I may be having that might be holding me back from things that I want to achieve in my life. So, for example, maybe there's a callus that showed up that hasn't been there before. So a callus kind of represents a little bit of a coating, like a shell, if you will, a hardening, right? Okay, so there's a couple of different meanings that can happen there. One is that we're protecting ourselves. We're forming an outer layer of protection. One might mean that we're hardening in our subconscious beliefs around something, some sort of information. And of course, depending on the toe, that's the piece of the puzzle that we would look at to see what that means, what that hardening means, or what that protection means. So that's just kind of one of the ways that it can show up. And when you know, kind of the people that are in the know are the people that can overcome the things that keep us kind of making the same mistakes over and over and over, or being on that, I used to describe things as feeling like I was on a hamster wheel, feeling like it was just like the same thing over and over and over, and it didn't matter what the situation was, it didn't matter what the scenario was, it didn't matter what I was going through, it didn't matter who I was going through it with. It just all felt kind of exactly the same, almost like deja vu, like, hey, I've been here before, Groundhog's Day, right? Where it's just repeating itself over and over and over. And so when you're aware of the subconscious beliefs or thoughts that are holding you in that cycle of behavior, it can help so much to overcome it, and it can help people overcome it, like that. Even just that awareness can really, really trigger some amazing things. And then the other way is that it can trigger memories that might take you back, and you might be able to, kind of turn it just a touch and view it from a different angle with the wisdom that you've achieved over the course of your life. So maybe it's something that happened when you were younger. Maybe it's something that happened yesterday and you were in the heat of the moment and it felt challenging. And then you can just take that step back, see how it's showing up in your toes, and shift your perspective on what it is that bothered you maybe about that whole experience. So and how it bothered you, and maybe things that it triggered in you. Anyway, so to me, toe reading is the most fascinating thing in the whole wide world. I think it's so much fun. It's very profound. For me and the people that sit with me, it's extremely accurate. And so thank you for being here with me today for a little bit of toe reading. So I always start my sessions with a quick little overview of the toe reading map. In toe reading, the left foot and the right foot are the yin and the yang. Left is yin, right is yang. And that's true for 99.7% of the population. So there is a 0.03% of the population that it might be reversed for. So it might be where the right foot shows up as the yin foot and the left foot shows up as the yang foot. But we're gonna go for today with the idea that the mass majority are going to recognize that the right foot is the yang foot and the left foot is the yin foot. Now, yang references how we handle our relationships with the people outside of us. So perhaps it's a family member, perhaps it's a friend, perhaps it's a coworker, maybe a boss, maybe just somebody that you interact with on the street. It's the people outside of yourself. The yin is all about your internal self. So that relationship with yourself, with your higher self, with your version of God, with how it shows up as your spiritual divine experience here on earth. So there are two more things that you need to know about the feet themselves before we go into what each individual toe means. So you'll notice that this side, as well as this side, which are the closest to the baby toes. So when things are more prominent on each of the toes, when they're more prominent on the baby toe side, that's future stories that we carry with us. So perhaps our communication toe has more padding. If you were to divide it in half, it might have more padding on that future side, okay? And what that would mean is that you're having a lot of future-oriented thoughts around whatever it is, whatever the subject is that the toes represent. Whereas if it points toward the big toe, it's more about the past stories that we carry, okay? So anything that's pointing toward the big toe, or that has more padding on the big toe side, or maybe that callus forms on the big toe side. So all of those are kind of how we hold that information within us. And so usually things that are held within us are based on past experiences. So they show up in how we deal with things from our past. Okay, does that make sense? I'm gonna take a little sip. Okay. So then each of the toes has a meaning, and they deal with the 5 main elements, the 7 main chakras, and then the different meanings. So ether is the destiny or big picture, air is communication or creativity, fire is action or temperament, water is how we go with the flow or how our relationships are in life, and earth is the only one that's different from foot to foot. On the internal self, it's about faith and trust. On the external self, it's about prosperity and abundance. And then each of the chakras shows up as well, where the earth toe, or the outside of the earth toe, is all about the root chakra on both sides. As we work our way in, we work up to where the foot on the inside of the big toe, so on the past side of the big toe in both scenarios, is all about our crown chakra and how that shows up. So it's root, then sacral, kind of crossover between these two. And then we have the solar plexus on the water toe. I think that's why when we have relationship challenges, how that solar plexus, so where it shows up is kind of in our gut area, where we have, gut anxiety or gut challenges. That's usually all about relationships. The fire is the action toe, which is all about how we go forth with our heart chakra. The air toe is about communication and creativity, and that's all about our throat chakra, where it shows up on our throat chakra. And then the third eye and the crown chakra are both on the big toe. So that is a very, very quick overview of the toe reading map and how the chakras show up in the toe reading map. So in the month of October 2020, we are all about the communication toe this month. So it is the second toe, the air toe, the pointer finger toe, if you will, and that is all about the communication in our lives. That's where creativity shows up. That's where our communication, where kind of the way that we go about communicating with somebody. It also, is where the sound and the vibration shows up, the self-expression, the listening, the speaking, and then also the writing. Okay, so if you're doing any kind of writing project or speaking engagement or anything like that, the communication toe is the one that you want to really look at and really kind of baby, if you will. You want to baby your toes to get it to a place of gentleness, and to get it to a place of just soothe it, so that when you do go out into the space of writing or the space of being a speaker, that you're dealing with a gentle side of yourself, if that's the right way to say it, and you're communicating gently, and you're not holding back, and you're being straightforward, but you're being gentle about being straightforward, right? So I have a picture that I've had since the very, very inception of my business, Soul Heart Entertainment, which before it was Soul Heart Entertainment was Reflexology and Toe Reading by Jamie. So this was the logo for Reflexology and Toe Reading by Jamie. And these gals were sweet enough to allow me to use their fantastic image for my logo. So I'm going to use their image for today's session, because there are 6 toes here, or 6 feet, 6 right feet. And so these toes, with the communication toe, which is the air toe, the pointer finger toe, would be all about how they are showing up in the world to communicate and show their creativity, and just really be themselves. And it's interesting to see 6 feet all together, because they're so different. And this is a group of women who get together very regularly, and do happy hour together and hang out together, and they're so different, and I love it. I love that we can all come together and have differences and still be very, very close. In fact, I think that we would be bored out of our minds if there wasn't difference happening in the world, right? All right, so let's start with the gal with the buckle on her shoe. And let's look at her communication toe, okay? So you can see that there's a pretty distinct separation between her big toe and her communication toe. And then you can also see that in comparison, her action toe is really kind of right up against that communication toe. The other thing that I notice is that there's a little bit of a bubbling of the padding at the tip. And then if we analyze it and we go even deeper, what we're talking about is that she has a little bit of extra padding. If you divide that toe just right in half, lengthwise, you see that she has a little bit of padding, a little bit of extra padding, that is, on the past side of that toe. And so where we would start with that toe reading is around how she's communicating. And obviously I always start with somebody with what their goals are, because that's what we're really trying to get at, is let's get you to your goals faster. Let's get those goals to fruition a lot faster. And in order to get your goals, or get to your goals faster, you have to know what's stopping you from getting to your goals faster, right? Or kind of the humps that you come across, or the obstacles, like why do those obstacles show up? So in looking at that toe, I see that she's holding back. She, the kind of bubbling up, I'm going to point to it again. Hold on just a second. So this bubbling up of her communication toe right here, where the padding of the tip of the toe is a little bit more significant than the rest of the toe. The rest of the toe is very slender and long. And then the tip kind of bubbles out. So she's holding back. She's not communicating everything that she feels like she wants to communicate. And because she's not communicating everything, or rather because because, you know, notice how my throat chakra is acting up like crazy. Whew. So because the padding is kind of more intense on that I'm sorry, it's not the past side, it's the future. No, it is the past side. Oi, oi, oi. It is it the big toe side or the baby toe side? It's the baby toe side, so it's the future side. So forgive me for saying the past side before. It is the future side that she has extra padding on, which tells me that her communication is very set in the future. And so what we would work on is we would work on bringing that communication into the present. So really sitting with and maybe meditating on what it looks like to achieve whatever goal it is that she has set for her, and, you know, kind of do a little bit of fun imagination scenarios around that. Because when we put it out into the future and we say, we will have that, or even if we're saying I'm working toward getting that, or, you know, this goal is something I'm working on, or I'm trying to think of a different word than working, but she's putting it out into the future too much, right? So if she wants to manifest it right now, what we need to do is talk about it in the present tense. So I am manifesting this now. I am creating this right now. I am, you know, whatever it is. I don't know what her goals are. I don't remember. It's been a long time ago. So anyway, so that's where we would start with that particular toe. One thing I do want to say about this toe is that she has a very, very round tip to that toe. If you can see, she has a very round tip to that toe. And one of the things is that she's a very gentle communicator, so she's very, very careful about what she says, but she's also going to beat around the bush a little bit. So maybe I would invite her to be a little bit more direct with her communication and a little bit more frank, because sometimes you have to ask for what you want. You can't have that passive aggressive, like, you know, well, maybe if I had this, I might be able to have that. It doesn't really work very well when we're manifesting things for ourselves, right? So we want to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more communicative around what we want, right? A little more direct. Hey, Nikki, how are you? So glad you're here. Okay, so next we'll go to this toe right here. We're talking about the air toe, the communication toe. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it around to myself and see what we have going on there on the silver toe. It looks like they all just had their toes done. It was a friend visit, super fun. So this gal has a nice long toe again. Her toes are all very, they're almost exactly equidistant from each other. What that usually tells me is that that's somebody who's going to be very, very organized. She's going to be like, not just organized on the outside, but organized on the inside. Like, it won't be just her house that's organized, it will be the drawers that are organized too, and the closets that are organized too, right? And I love seeing that, because I have a tendency to be that way as well when it comes to, like, I like everything where it's supposed to go, right? In difference to her friend that we talked about with the round tip toe, this gal has a little bit more of a flat tip when it comes to the padding at the tip of her communication toe. So she's going to be a little bit more straightforward. She's going to come across a little bit harsher maybe sometimes to some people. Some people won't like that she's very direct. but she because her toe is kind of the same width all the way up from the back of where the toe meets the foot all the way to the tip of the toe, it's about the same equidistant on the padding. That is going to be somebody that you can count on to say what they mean and mean what they say. She's going to be somebody who's a very clear communicator, somebody who's very organized, somebody who's going to come across as she has her stuff together. And the padding on either side of the toe, there's not one side of the toe that has more padding than the other side of the toe. So she's gonna be pretty much in the present tense at all times. So she's probably a lot of fun to be around because there's no future, there's no past. It's all the present, right? What was that saying? Too much reliance on the past is depression. Too much worry about the future is anxiety. The only thing that exists is the present moment, right? And it's kind of what we all say. Happiness is in the present moment because that's all that exists when it comes right down to it, right? So yeah, so I think that her communication toe is probably the one that's the most reliable, if that's the right word, among this group. Poor girls, I'm totally comparing them to each other. So this communication toe on this, let's see what that's, I guess, like a beige flip-flop right here. This is, you can see how it's kind of turned. There's a little bit of a turning, and that turning is toward the big toe. So when we have anything that turns toward the big toe, what are we talking about? We are talking about somebody who thinks in the past. They have a vision for the past. But what's really interesting about this toe is that because her toenail turns toward the past, she has more padding on the future side of her toenail. So what happens with that person probably is that she gets really, really excited about planning something and communicates it and is really excited about that future stuff because it's a big, big thing. She's really great at big projects and big pictures and wants to go and get stuff done. But then because her toe is kind of turned to the past, she gets hung up on what's not going to work, what's not going to happen, how things aren't going to go right, how the bottom of the floor might drop out from under her. So she probably gets stuck in this cycle of getting really excited about something and then really like let down by it because it's not coming to fruition the way that she envisioned in the first place, right? So if I were working with this gal, we would start by working on getting her future speak into the present tense and releasing some of those worries, I guess, about the past, or she kind of teeter-totters back and forth between that anxiety and that depression, just in worrying too much and not having enough focus on right here, right now. What can we accomplish right now? What can we delegate? What can we focus on? What, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's a very, very basic overview of that toe. So let's move on to the black toe, or black shoe toe. So if you look at this communication, well, again, these toes kind of have a little bit of an equidistance when we get into that relationship toe and that on the right foot. Those are all right feet, by the way, just in case you didn't see that. We won't really get into what those toes are telling us, but if you see the action, the temperament and communication, and the big picture toe are all kind of coming straight forward. They're all about equidistance apart. So she's going to be very organized too, at least in the world around her is going to look very organized. When you look at the padding on her toenail, her foot very much, I'm backing up to this gal over here. Her padding, so these two are going to have very similar communication styles. the padding comes across a little bit flatter on the tip. Maybe there's some rounding at the corners. So she's, you know, a little gentle about how she goes about communicating, but it's also, but she also is very direct about how she wants things done and what she you know, how she wants things handled, right? So these two would make really good bosses in that, or managers, in that they would be good at communicating exactly what they wanted. You wouldn't have to guess, because they'll definitely tell you what they want. There was, I had a manager once that I would have loved to have looked at his toes, but he was really, really good at communicating the idea of what he wanted, but he didn't communicate how he wanted it done. And then he'd get really like offended that we didn't know exactly how he wanted it done, only he never communicated it. It was, so he must have had a really, really round toe, like beating around the bush is kind of what that reminds me of. Anyway, but she has padding on both sides of her toes that's pretty much the same from toe to, you know, from side to side. It's about equidistance, so she doesn't have too many future thoughts or too many past thoughts. I would say that if anything, there's a tiny bit of a dive to the floor on the very tip of her toenail. So she probably has a little bit of a negativity to the way that she communicates. So we would maybe start by working on why that's showing up in her life, if it's showing up and why it's showing up, that sort of thing. So then over to this second to last toe. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Let me know if you want to ask anything. We'll go to this communication toe right here, on this other silver. What are these called? Thongs? No, I don't know. Anyway, so she has all of these girls really have very long toes for the most part, right? So the long toes are all about that princess effect, or archetype, if you will. One of the things about the princess archetype is that they are the ambassadors of whatever, of their families, of their companies, of how they show up in the world, because they are people that they represent really, really well. They're the people that you want to be in the front part of the company, because you want them to be the face of the company. They're really, really good at it. But anyway, back to this one. So you can see on this toe, I think you can see that about halfway through the toe, that little dent or that little line, it's actually kind of doing that like dive curve, okay? So when a toe kind of takes that dive, it is usually something from childhood, some sort of trauma from childhood that occurred that made her hold back communication or creativity or maybe analytical reasoning skills. So she probably struggles a little bit with being able to voice her opinion, being able to feel heard in the world, and to just be very clear about what she wants and how she wants it. So she probably beats around the bush a little bit. She probably struggles a little bit when it comes to what that looks like in her life as far as the communication and creativity. I think it has to do with really both. Maybe creative problem solving is a struggle there. So with this gal, the way that we would work together as far as life coaching goes, we would work together on where we can release some of the holding back, because when a toe kind of bends in that manner, usually it's because somebody's really, really reining themselves in. They're really holding back what they don't want to do, right? or maybe they don't want to make mistakes. Maybe they're afraid of disappointing somebody. Maybe they're not feeling confident enough or have that self-worth challenge. And there can also be a true trauma or traumatic experience from childhood that might be holding them back like that. So that's how that shows up. Last toe that we'll talk about tonight, super, super quick, is this gal's right here. She has this gorgeous, they all have super long toes. This gal in particular, well, I guess both of these gals, the first gal that I talked about and this last gal that I'm talking about, notice how their second toe comes past their big toe. So those are both, usually when that pointer finger toe goes past the big toe, they're super good at analytics. They're super good, maybe they're CPAs, maybe they handle numbers all day. They're really amazing at handling the creative problem solving when it comes to, usually they're math people. I don't know why that is, but that's kind of how they show up, at least in my world. They usually have a tendency to be the math people of the world. So this gal you can see that she has kind of a little bit of a hole. She's a really straight communicator, so she has that straight padding across the tip. But it kind of comes to a little bit of a cone shape, if you will, where the tip of the padding is a little bit wider than the toe itself. So what that tells me is that she's constantly in funnel mode. Okay, so I think of funnel mode as we're constantly receiving information, right? So she's constantly receiving information, and maybe she's not good at processing it right then and there. Maybe she needs to let it sit with her and let it kind of percolate, and then she'll feel comfortable communicating whatever it is that she needs to communicate on whatever subject. That said, because the rest of her toes don't have that, it would lead me to believe that she struggles in getting her voice heard or feeling heard, as the case may be. So she might get caught in that really analytical mind of hers, and it might show up as a challenge to be able to verbalize what it is that she's thinking, because there's a lot of thoughts that come in when we're good receivers of information. It can be very hard to communicate that in words that everybody else understands, right? So that's a little bit about the right communication toe. That's all about external self. That's how we show up in the world and how we analyze and communicate and create. And next week we'll maybe talk about the left foot toes around communication and creativity and see how that shows up inside us internally. So hope you join me next week for ToesDay. We'll talk about communication toes again, the air toe, but we will maybe translate that to the left foot so that we can talk a little bit deeper about how that shows up within ourselves. So if you can join me, I'd love you to be here again. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye for now. Jamie with Soul Heart Entertainment.